Shannon, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Fury,
Here.
Mr. McDermott,
Here.
Mr. Yates,
Here.
Mrs. Stoffer,
Here.
Mr. Roden,
Here.
Mr. Sorese,
Here.
Mr. Scafidi.
Here.
This time I'd like Mr. Roden to lead us in a opening prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance.
Almighty and eternal God, you know the longing of men's hearts and you protect their rights. In your goodness, watch over those in authority so that people everywhere may enjoy freedom, security, and peace. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I think I would be more embarrassed if you.
Are there any changes or amendments to the minutes from our December 2nd meeting? Having heard none, the minutes stand. Awards and presentations. Mayor Prokop?
Okay. Mark's getting the mic here for me.
Hello, hello.
Thank you, Mark. Well, I have a really great presentation this evening for Dave and Liz Murch, if they would come up here. I'm very, very excited about it. I'm so excited to see that we have so many of our VFW members here to support both of you and so many of your friends. This is just really awesome. Come on up. This is their meeting, right?
Yeah, but it's supposed to be at the old city hall.
That's okay. We're happy to have him here. I have to start by saying that we moved into this community, my family, 1977. My son was 2 years old. And one of the first places we went to was Richner Hardware. You helped us move in. I mean, whether it was masking tape or nails or whatever we needed, that's where you ran up to, was Richner Hardware, to get whatever you needed to get your household chores done or moving in our case. It was either there or Macera's. We got our supplies at Macera's and our home supplies at Richner Hardware. So we have watched each other's families grow over the years. Your son Davey, your daughter Erin, and now grandchildren. And it's really wonderful when you have a couple here who have been the fabric of the community for so many years. First of all, your family and your father owned the hardware store.
Yes, my great-grandfather
Great-
started it.
And to have that continue on for generations is just amazing, because you're not only business owners in the community, but you're residents in the community, and you have such a vested interest. It's been pretty phenomenal. So I would like to present this to you tonight, and I'm going to read it. This is a proclamation, whereas the administration and council of the city of Twinsburg extend heartfelt thanks to Elizabeth and David Murch for their many years of providing excellent service and advice, and it's true. You get to know everybody that comes into your store, and the next thing you know, you're talking about who's got the sore foot or the knee ache or whatever it is, and it does become advice. To the residents of Twinsburg as owners of Richner Hardware. And whereas the family owned and operated Richner Hardware was established in 1919, Elizabeth and David took over the family business in 1979. And whereas Elizabeth and David have many ties to the Twinsburg community beyond the doors of the hardware store. Their children, Erin and David, were raised in Twinsburg and attended Twinsburg schools. Elizabeth and David are members of the First Congregational Church of Twinsburg, UCC. In 1993, Elizabeth and David followed in the footsteps of Elizabeth's parents, Carol and Wilford Terrell, by being named Twinsburg Chamber of Commerce Persons of the Year. David is a member of the Masonic Lodge 213 and has held the offices of Master and Chaplain. He is a member of VFW Post 4929 and has served as chaplain for a number of years, as well as participating in Memorial Day ceremonies. Elizabeth is an Eastern Star member of Masonic Lodge 213. For 19 years, Elizabeth served as executive director and executive administrator for the Twinsburg Chamber of Commerce. Elizabeth has also been active with Girl Scouts of America and was awarded the Appreciation Pin for her many years of service and leadership contributions. Elizabeth and David were members of the Relay for Life team around the town, raising funds with their famous Buckeye candy sales, and I'm sure everybody here has had some of Liz's famous Buckeyes. Now, therefore, I, Catherine Prokop, Mayor of the City of Twinsburg, and on behalf of the entire Twinsburg community, do hereby thank Elizabeth and David Murch for their continuing service and volunteer legacy established by the Richner Hardware family. Thank you so much. I'm just... Congratulations. Look at this. You know, it's bittersweet. We're so happy for you because we know that you're going on to enjoy some years with your grandkids and your kids. And it's sad to see Richner Hardware close its doors, but what an institution in this city. It's really been wonderful, and we really appreciate everything you've done for the community, not just as business owners, but as people who love the community. So it's truly wonderful. Would you like to say anything, either?
Oh, it's your family.
Well, it seems strange to get an award for something that's closing, but I was born and raised here, and we lived in Chicago for a few years and then came back, and I'm so glad we did. When we moved away, we said we'd never come back, but it was a good thing we did. And we appreciate everyone in the community. The last couple of weeks, we've had an awful lot of people come in and appreciate what we've done to help them, and we've gotten to know so many people in the community because of the store. I just can't imagine ever having done anything else, and we're just truly overwhelmed by this honor. Thank you.
Ditto what she said.
Well, congratulations, and thank you for your many years of service to the community, both in the business world and as a community residents. Thank you.
Thank you for this honor.
We do appreciate it.
Mrs. Stauffer, could you meet me in the front for a second?
Good night, gentlemen.
Maureen, this is on behalf of the rest of City Council. We'd like to thank you for the work that you did last year as Council President. And I sat next to you and I saw the amount of work and prep you did for those meetings. So I wanted to thank you very much. And here's a plaque for you to remember us by.
Forgot about this. Thank
All
you
right.
very much.
Thank you. Oh. Next on our agenda is audience participation. Shannon?
Yes, we do. First, we have Dr. Whiten.
Shannon, do you want to?
She is?
Yeah.
No, that's fine.
Good evening, council, mayor, lawyer. I came to talk about the trail, but the subject of my discussion is decisions. A handful of men changed the world when they decided to knock down 3 buildings. Decisions create circumstances, and most of the problems we have are not decision problems, but they're wisdom problems. Changes begin with conversations, and good conversations will be full of questions. It's wisdom to collect questions. Don't look at the answer until you hear the question. Answers are employees of questions. Answers hide from everybody but questions, and answers are usually in the questions. Be careful not to find the answer until you have heard the question. the person asking the question could be the doorkeeper of the answer for which you are looking. I have joined with these residents who want to ask questions. It saddens me because some other people don't feel the pain and the helplessness that we feel. My assignment in this matter is to speak for those who are not celebrated with the questionless decisions that have been made about us. I am not speaking for the whole of Twinsburg. I am just speaking for our local pain. My assignment may be the missing part of this puzzle. I have been skilled and strangely qualified to bring you this message. Most problems are not decision problems, but they are wisdom problems. Decisions create circumstances, and circumstances without wisdom create problems. Wisdom is the principal thing. Therefore, get wisdom. But in all of your getting, get understanding. Proverbs chapter 7, verse 14.
Thank you very much.
Next, we have, I believe it's Florence Bonacci.
Good evening, Mayor Prokop, Consul.
Mrs. Mach, you might want to just pull the mic down a little
Oh,
bit so
sure.
that you're speaking into.
Speaking into air.
Yes. Thank you, ma'am.
Well, you know. My concern this evening starts with having little or no information about a planned multi-purpose trail between Glen Willow and Twinsburg. As a senior member of Twinsburg, I don't feel I have received adequate information about this project as my neighbors did. As of today, I still have not received any information, nor do I recall any recent Ward 1 meetings. When I questioned city officials about not receiving this information, I was told I was not affected. How can that be when I can see stakes to mark the trail from my window? When Mayor Parisi was the Twinsburg mayor, we built our home. We go back as far as Mayor Prokop. That says something. We built our home, and the city would not allow basements because we were close to a floodplain. I live on Woodchuck Court. We have seen the creek overflow into our backyard several times. I believe this is why we were told that nothing would ever be developed or built on the proposed property. I'm opposed to strangers walking behind my property. I invite all of you to my park-like wooded area. How can I be assured that the users of the trail will not stray for whatever their reasons may be onto my property or my neighbors? Without a barrier of some kind, the land all looks the same. Simply putting the trail on the other side of the creek would utilize the creek as a natural, cost-effective barrier. This would eliminate that problem. The bulletin stated the trail would be on city property. How did the cities of Glen Willow and Twinsburg acquire the Glen Willow Properties Incorporated land? What was offered for this access? Erosion has been a long-lasting concern for some residents, with reported concerns for years. Why has it been ignored for so long by the city, only to be used now as leverage for an unneeded trail? The erosion still must be addressed and taken care of, but putting a trail in the path of erosion does not seem to be a long-term solution. $1.6 million for a trail that would be used by a limited number of residents is a lot of money. Wouldn't the money be better spent making sidewalks that connect neighborhoods, schools, and businesses together? It would be a win-win for the city residents by putting pedestrian safety first by providing sidewalks on major thoroughfares. I want to thank the city for providing city services for my family. However, in this instance, I feel that I have been left out of this project proposal. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
Next, we have Pete Bruce.
I would also like to protest the trail. I have the creek right in my backyard. It's about 120 feet from my back door. I don't really want people walking through my backyard. I live in a high crime area on Heritage Drive. A few years ago, the generator for the pump station next door to me was moved right next to my driveway, and 50 feet from my bed it wakes me up at night, but that's helped to increase the crime in my driveway. Got cars breaking into, cars vandalized, stuff stolen from my driveway. I think this trail would lead to more crime at my house and in the area. And I also agree, I don't think you should put a trail where there's all this erosion going on. And of course I protested the generator being moved, and it wasn't really up to me, you know, these decisions. I don't know if this was your people's backyard, whoever's making these decisions. I don't think you'd want this trail coming through your yard. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
And we have one more, and Keith, and I'm going to let you pronounce your last name. Sorry. Blumenfeld. Ah.
How you doing, ladies and gentlemen, Mayor Pro Cop? Yeah, I live on Woodchuck Court, and my little safety concern is numerous times I've already found kids and strangers and walking dogs peeking out from behind the trees in my yard and asking, "What are you doing?" You know, I have little children, I have a pool in my yard, and I'm a little bit concerned. I may have all the security cameras in the world, but I'm at Put-in-Bay 50% of the time because I have businesses there. I'm in St. Louis working half the time, gone at months at a time. Who's going to watch my wife and kids? I mean, there's people walking back there. Cops are back there constantly with people back there with little bomb fires and problems. Now, what are we going to do? Put a roadway through there, a highway through behind my house? I bought the house because it was quiet, a nice little cul-de-sac, 150,000, put about 200 into it, gutted it, inside, exterior, generators, granite countertops, and I think I'm gonna have to put a for sale sign in it, because I didn't come to this town to find a nice little property so we could open a freeway in the back that's gonna cross over to Oakwood Village, and it's just a little bit concerning to me that, I mean, there's road paths and pathways, there's all kinds of stuff where people can walk and go, trails, and we know what happens with trails, and I mean, I've seen the crime statistics on different areas, Cuyahoga Valley, where they've opened trails and somebody's getting mugged, and you know, I mean, now I got to worry about my bathroom windows in the back, they're tinted. Now I got to worry about somebody standing back there looking into my house, into my pool, into my bedroom windows. It's fairly quiet down there, but I just, and the erosion is a problem back there, but you know, it's everything erodes, everything changes. I just don't think it's a great idea. I don't think anybody's going to use it. I think it's the biggest waste of money you want. If you want, you guys can give it to me, because I don't see where anybody's going to walk from, you know, across there to across the creek or whatever into Twinsburg. I don't get it. I just think it was either some, I don't know if it's funding or somebody said, hey, here's a grant, what it is, but it's just, I think it's a lot of wasted money. I obviously do, and I really think it's public safety to put trails through people's backyards that thought they were buying next to state property because no one was going to move there, no one was going to build there. I didn't think I was going to have to look. Now, I mean, it's occasionally I was sitting on the deck, I'm like this, and there's somebody walking their dog through their neighbors around that walk back there, but there's people that walk back through there, nobody even knows who they are half the time, and then the police department will be back there chasing them out. So now we're gonna put a road in there, and you know what I mean, and then they're gonna come back through there and be in because it comes right behind your backyard. And it's just a little bit concerned to me, is there gonna be safety signs, no trespassing signs, is there gonna be some fences, is there gonna be, or is it just an open freeway, you know, to walk into my house? I don't know. I mean, I keep a lot of valuables and antiques in my house. I could take you there personally and show you, you would probably flip out. But now I'm gonna have to go put them somewhere else, because when you start opening stuff like that, there's gonna be some issues. I mean, I just can see it. People walk through there. I've had problems with people walking back, peeking around the barn. I went back there one day, the guy's running through the woods. I don't know who it is. I don't know who they are. But if you put an open trail there, you're gonna have more of that. And I just think I mean, I never heard anything about a trail until my neighbors called me and said, "You didn't see that?" And I'm like, "No, I'm working out of town. I don't sit and watch the news in Twinsburg all day because I'm hardly here." So that's my concerns. Somebody asked me, I was gonna call my attorneys and ask them what they thought, but, you know, I'm tired of paying my attorneys money to fight losing battles, so I didn't call them. But, I hope you reconsider how you're running the trail through and maybe spending your money there, because I just don't get it why people are gonna cross the trail through a landfill. I mean, I really haven't seen much, but you're gonna cross the trail through a landfill that used to be there that's buried, and people are gonna walk through it, and doesn't seem very educated science to be spending money there, especially in the way times are now. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Are there anybody else?
There is no more.
Okay, we're done. Sam, would you like to respond?
Yeah, I would. I'd just like to make a couple comments. Being the ward councilman there, I've spoken with Pete and Lori Bruce. I've talked with Mrs. Bonacci as well as Dr. Burrow on the phone. And we've had lengthy conversations, and I thought they were productive and good conversations. There were good questions asked, and I tried to answer those questions to the best of my ability. I heard things tonight like no meeting, no Ward 1 meeting, and 1.6 million, and never heard about the trail. Well, as I mentioned to everybody on the phone, that there is a preliminary plan right now in place with this trail. There's been no definitive answers. There's been nothing that says that this trail is going forward. It's all in the planning stages, as I explained on the phone. There have been people back there, absolutely. And I know, Mrs. Bonacci, you did not get a letter, and I'm not sure why you didn't get a letter, but we talked the day that there were people out there, and they were out there in unmarked trucks, and I understand that, and I spoke with the Chagrin Valley Engineering Group and said, you know, if you go out there again, you need to put lettering on your vehicles. But they were out there all for fact-finding, all to get soil samples. They were looking at right-of-ways. They're trying to figure out, you know, nobody even knows exactly where this trail may end up, if in fact it happens, okay? And I'll say it publicly as I said it to you on the phone, so there's no mistake that I'm saying two different stories, because I'm not. I'm saying the same story here on television in front of this audience as well as I did on the telephone one-on-one. There's nothing says that this trail is for sure. As far as I understand, this trail's been on the books for over 10 years, okay? And it's never gotten off the ground. And they're trying to just dust it off again and see if it's even feasible or possible to do. So what they've been doing so far is all fact-finding to see where this trail may go, if in fact the trail does go. As far as spending $1.6 million, that's a number that's being thrown out there. But until you have a final plan, you don't have a final number. The reason the cost of the trail increased was because of the opportunity to be able to now correct the erosion problems back there that have haunted the folks that live there, I understand, for several years. And because of this trail and the possibility of the trail, it now allows the city an opportunity to be able to apply for funding to fix that erosion, which they did not have the opportunity to do so before. So, you know, it envelopes that as well, and that's what drove the cost up. Now, $1.6 million. The city of Twinsburg does not plan on spending $1.6 million. At least this councilman's not voting that way, okay? That trail, whatever it comes out to be, whatever that final number is, once that number comes out, then the city and the village are able to apply for funding, okay? And whatever funding, they're gonna apply for whatever funding they can get, okay? There's AMATS in Summit County, there's NOACA in Cuyahoga County, and there's other, I'm sorry?
Clean Ohio Fund.
And the Clean Ohio Fund as well, that they're gonna be applying for. So, between the village and the city, we're gonna apply for as much money as we can. And if in fact the program, the trail goes forward, whatever monies are not funded, then at that point, the village and the city would have to split those dollars. And only then, once we know what that is, can we make a decision as to whether we're going to go forward with this trail or not. So, you know, it's still a long way away, and I've told everybody that even if it were planned today, you know, we're still looking at 2 years out. Even if everything fell into place, we're looking at 2 years out before you see a trail back there, okay? So there's a lot of things that need to happen yet before we even get to that point, because we're not even ready to apply for any funding. And as I mentioned to everybody that I speak with on the phone, that once we have a final plan and we know exactly what this trail, the proposed trail, is going to look like, we will have a public meeting with everybody affected by the trail. Have you in here, most likely, have the map there. It'll be up on the screen there. We're going to show you what the proposal is, okay, and how it may or may not affect your properties. And then you're going to have the opportunity to ask questions, and then we're going to have the opportunity to answer questions. And then and only then, once we get all that out, I know there's a lot of rumors going out there right now, and I hear the calls and I get the emails. There are a lot of rumors out there right now, but you've got to wait until we don't have a plan. And again, I just wanted to make this publicly clear to everybody that I've talked with on the telephone, that I'm saying it right here on television. There's nothing in there definite yet, okay? It's all proposed. And once we do have that plan, we will have you folks in here, and we'll present it to you, we'll talk about it, we'll hear your concerns, we'll try to answer them to the best of our ability. And if it winds up being a win-win, I say we go forward. If it doesn't, well, then I say we put it back in the back burner. So that's my speech for tonight, and I'm sorry I took up so much time, but I just felt like I needed to say that because I wanted to be sure that everybody knows that what I was saying to you on the telephone is what I'm saying to everybody, and I'm saying it in public as well. So thank you. If you have any other questions, as you have, please feel free to call me. I will be more than happy to continue to discuss it with you, and you know, we could take it from there. And if you want any updates, I don't know if there's any updates going out via email. Amy, are there any updates going? Not yet? Not yet, because again, it's proposed and it's just a preliminary. So eventually, I'm sure there'll be an email chain, and everybody will know what the steps are and where it's going from that point on. Thank you.
Sure. Anybody else? Okay. Next on our agenda are committee reports. Mr. Scafidi?
Since last Tuesday, in my new committees, we have not met yet. However, the BZA is scheduled to meet. They're not going to meet anymore this month, but they will meet sometime in January, and I'll apprise everybody at our first meeting then.
Thank you.
That's all I have. Oh, one last thing. I would just like to, seeing as this is our last meeting before December 25th, I want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays to all of our relatives, all of our residents, and the citizens here of the city of Twinsburg. And that's all I have tonight. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Yates?
Yes, again, there's been no committees of mine that have met in the last week. The Planning Commission is set to meet on December 15th, so next Monday, but I haven't seen an agenda yet, so I'm not sure if that's going to go forward. And anything, I just want to talk about the memorial. Had another fundraiser that was last week, Thursday night. It was a whiskey night at Brewster's. Again, another event. I don't drink whiskey, but it was fun. The food was fantastic. And it's just fun getting together with the community. These events, not only do they serve the purpose of raising money for a great cause. It's just reasons for our residents to get together and you know, in a social setting. So it's always a fun time. So, and then on that, just I want to wish all the residents just a great holiday, Christmas, New Year's. Everyone be safe in your travels if you're doing that, and we'll see you next year.
Thank you. Mr. McDermott?
Yes, I have no meeting to discuss this evening. However, I do want to wish everyone a good holiday and a safe holiday. Thank you.
Thank you. None of my committees have met in the last week. Tomorrow morning, we have the Chamber of Commerce at 8 o'clock at the Chamber Building. Tomorrow evening at 7 o'clock in City Hall is the Park and Recs Commission meeting. And next Monday, the 15th, there is a Planning Commission meeting. And right now on the agenda is a Liberty Road sidewalk program. So, and I would also like to wish everybody a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Mr. Roden.
Thank you. None of my committees have met. I do want to again announce that on Wednesday, December 17th, I did get it right this time, December, we do have Light the Night. It is the second night of Hanukkah, and you can come to the Activity Center from 6 to 7:30. We will be having potato latkes. We'll be doing games with the dreidel and having music. So please join us. Anyone's welcome. You don't have to be Jewish. But please come and join us and see how we celebrate. And again, it's Light the Night. It's Wednesday, December 17th from 6 to 7:30 at the Activity Center. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Sorese.
None of my committees have met in the past week. Thanks.
Thank you. Mrs. Stoffer.
I have no report tonight either,
Okay.
but I would like to wish everybody a very happy holiday. That's
Thank you. Mayor Prokop.
Thank you, Mr. Fury. Really, I don't have any announcements tonight, believe it or not. I know I usually have a whole long list of them, but I do just have one thing that I would like to mention since it's the last meeting of the year. I would like to thank the Summit County National Day of Prayer Task Force. Every month, at least once a month, sometimes more than once a month, I receive a card in the mail that looks like this, and someone signs it and says, "We have prayed for you today." And they send these cards and pray for legislators throughout Summit County. And I want everybody to know that I read this card, and it means a lot to me, and I really appreciate their prayers. We all need them, and I just think it's a wonderful thing for them to do. So thank you to the task force for sending their good thoughts and prayers to all of us in public office. And with that, our first report tonight will be from Karen House, Finance Director.
Okay. That was fast. Sorry.
You weren't prepared. I know I usually go on for about 10 minutes. Sorry about that.
Okay, well, I do have just almost one item to report. We have been awarded who our auditor will be for the next 4 to 5 years. I received a memo stating that the award for the years 2014 through December 2018 goes to Perry & Associates. And Chuni and Panicki will continue to do our GAAP conversion. Just received that notice. And for the years that I indicated, the total charge will be $138,500. We are, Perry & Associate was paired to do our audit as well as the City of North Canton. Keep you updated on once we get the contract in place. And that's all I have to report. Happy holidays.
Good. Derek, Parks and Recreation.
Good evening. I've been here in a few weeks, and a lot has happened in a few weeks, at least in my world. So many of you I saw at Luminosity, so I want to thank you for your support of that event. I think behind the scenes it was kind of crazy, but I think the appearance to the crowd and residents, it was successful, and I've gotten a lot of feedback on it. I think we have definitely something in the works here for the future to come. It was quickly thrown together in about 4 weeks, and I think it was a good time to work with the township and work on an event together. It's the first time we've done something like that. At least I've done something like that. And then Winter Wonderland was this past weekend, which is the indoor version of Luminosity kind of, and We have Breakfast with Santa this Saturday, which is completely sold out. But if there's any volunteers, let me know, because it's going to be a huge crowd. We're doing it at the Firehouse this year, trying something new to see how that works. And as Councilman Roden mentioned, Light the Night is on Wednesday. So my happy holidays have been exhausted. We wish everyone, happy holidays for all these events, and it's great to see the community turn out and see. I've had some people at Breakfast with Santa been coming ever since I've started it, probably 12 or so years ago. So it's pretty cool to watch those little kids grow up. We have senior events coming up, the holiday party, which I think most of you are all attending, so that's great, and the senior New Year's Eve party as well. And a couple things outside of events is Witch is on par to open here sometime after Christmas, looking maybe a soft opening, and then push for a grand opening. Fitness Center is wrapping up all their capital projects over the next couple weeks here. We also have winter camps there over Christmas break. We have a Cavs camp. Then we have our regular just youth camp. I think there's even another basketball camp outside of the Cavs one. We are booking bands and getting sponsorship for Rock the Park right now, and we are planning summer camp as well. And pretty soon I'm going to get with HR department. Those interested in working as lifeguards, day camp leaders, start looking in January for the website. Also, if you're looking to volunteer as well, it's January and February. We get many inquiries in May, April. That's way too late. All that happens in January and February, and you can see even the volunteer options if you click on employment or job openings on the city website. And wish you all happy holidays. And if you have any questions?
No, I just want to tell you a very nice job this past weekend on the Winter Wonderland. Again, good Santa Claus. My daughter's still.
I will tell you, Santa Claus is
He's great.
That's the best Santa Claus I've seen around. I mean, of course he is, because he's the real one. But
That was
yeah,
good.
he's an amazing Santa Claus. And K&M International, I want to thank them. They provide all the toys for that every year. They have for probably going on 5 or 6 years. So we appreciate their support as a local company.
Thank
And
you
I
for
will
that,
stop talking now.
Thanks.
Thank you, Derek.
Thanks, Derek.
Colette? Human Resources, Colette Wozniak.
Good evening, everybody. For civil service, the November meeting, we approved some rule changes and certified the dispatch eligibility list. And then from that list, we have hired one full-time dispatcher, David Goldstein, who had previously served as a part-time dispatcher. He had finished within the top 10 and was hired as a full-time dispatcher. Our next civil service meeting is this Thursday, December 11th. We do have on the agenda a request for a police entrance exam to be held in January or early February. We are down a couple of police officers and hope to be filling those positions within the early part of next year. For HR, the Healthcare Cost Containment Committee met last month and continues to meet to look for plan design options for next year. Once we get our renewal done, we'll be looking to put some efforts into our wellness initiatives, hoping to keep, if we can keep our costs down by keeping our claims costs down, we can keep our claims costs down by being healthier and participating in a more active, healthy lifestyle. So we're going to be looking at that. We hired one full-time plant attendant in the wastewater treatment plant, Matt Fetchko. This was to replace a retirement for Phil Falstick. Currently, there's no full-time vacancies, and so the numbers for the end of the year, our full-time employees are 167. Part-time is 101, and our current seasonals are just 4. We have 4 seasonals. A couple are over at the aquatics, and one is at the golf course through the end of the year. In the IT department, Windstream is in the process of installing our new high-speed fiber internet line. It will come into the building up by the mayor's office. Mark is currently working on quotes for the new council chamber video recording system. And we're still continuing to move software onto our new servers, which all the servers are in place, but now all the software, such as the Sportsman program, was recently moved over to the new server. That's the program that runs all our Parks and Rec department. So that's some of the things that IT is working on, along with the installation of the new time clocks in that system. Other than that, happy holidays. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Colette.
That's all we have this evening.
Thank you, Mayor.
Larry?
Oh, no worries.
Guess what?
But he's the longest guy.
I'll be brief. Thanks very much. Yeah, I didn't give a report at the last council meeting, so here I am. Thanks
We're
for
happy
hearing.
you're here.
Number of legislative items are on the agenda that came from community development and will be requiring some action. 115 is the distributed antenna system legislation, and that will provide small cell tower booster, basically antennas, 6 of them proposed throughout the community. That's Resolution 115. Resolution 149 is a Twinsburg occupancy program incentive agreement for U.S. Fittings, who's occupying 2182 East Aurora Road. Resolution 151 is the CRA agreement for Cornerstone, Twinsburg Industrial Properties, and Bridgestone Tire for a CRA agreement for the Cornerstone Business Park. Resolution 153, the Cornerstone plat. So, in addition to that, we've been working on finalizing the scope of services for the analysis of the Central Twinsburg roadway network. We've received a proposal from GPD after we selected them as, on the basis of qualifications. Amy and I and the mayor are working through their scope of services, and we'll be coming back with the scope and cost very soon. We continue to work with the telecommunications tower site selector for a possible cell tower site on the western part of the community. We're also continuing to work with Prospectus architects and staff to determine the feasibility and characteristics of the proposed Glen Eagles Clubhouse and related improvements. The purpose of this is to keep our golf course competitive and to generate additional revenues. The whole idea here is to have a course that can support itself in the long run. We're looking at a number of things, including owning rather than leasing golf carts, going to electric carts, how we handle cart storage, the building size, activity spaces in the building, any event characteristics and requirements that the building might accommodate, the pro shop, the administrative needs, and the whole 9 yards. So we're trying to provide something that will be cost effective for the community and will help offset the cost of its operation. Coming soon, coming back to council will be the Young Explorers Montessori CRA agreement, basically because the Young Explorers people will not be owning the building. They're going to have the building owned by another entity, and then they will lease the building from that entity. Because there will be a different property owner than the job creator, we will require that both are partners to the CRA agreement. So we'll be bringing back an amendment to the resolution that created the CRA for Young Explorers Montessori at the next council meeting, and all that requires is an amendment to the resolution to add the property owner name. With that, I'd like to wish council and everybody a happy holidays, and look forward to working with you next year. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Larry.
Thank you, Mr. Finch.
That's all we have now.
Thanks, Mayor. Didn't get any calls in the last minute or so?
No, no
Just
last
checking.
minute calls.
All right, next on our agenda is legislation. First on that, first legislation is Resolution 115, 2014.
A resolution confirming the Planning Commission's approval of a site plan for CAPS Technology Incorporated, approving the placement of a distribution antenna system in a public facility district and public right-of-way.
I make a motion that we adopt Resolution 115, 2014. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Yates, second. Discussion?
Now, these are this is the antenna system that's going around town that's been discussed numerous times at Planning Commission. The company did a good job working with Planning Commission, both on the looks, appearance of these poles, explaining what the purposes are, as well as moving around locations to satisfy some concerns they had, planning commission concerns regarding the locations near residential areas and other areas in the city from a business standpoint that would not be attractive. So, but I think that we've finally come to all the approved positions of these that are on the legislation tonight.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Shannon, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Fury,
Yes.
Mr. Yates,
Yes.
Mrs. Stoffer,
Yes.
Mr. Roden,
Yes.
Mr. Sorese,
Yes.
Mr. Scafidi,
Yes.
Mr. McDermott.
Yes.
Resolution 115, 2014 passes 7-0. Ordinance 124, 2014.
An ordinance increasing the fees for ambulance transportation services with Life Force Management Incorporated and declaring an emergency.
I'd like to make a motion that we place ordinance 124, 2014 on its third and final reading and declare it an emergency. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Mr. McDermott seconds. The reason for the emergency is that we'd like to start this clean at the first of the year with the modest increases in EMS billing. Now I'd like to make a motion that we adopt as an emergency ordinance 124, 2000, excuse me. We were talking about the discussion on the emergency, but we didn't vote on that yet, did we?
Correct.
Correct.
Shannon, would you call the roll for that emergency, please?
Mr. Fury,
Yes, please.
Mr. McDermott,
Yes.
Mr. Roden,
Yes.
Mr. Sorese,
Yes.
Mr. Scafidi,
Yes.
Mr. Yates,
Yes.
Mrs. Stoffer.
Yes.
Okay. The emergency passes 7-0. And now I'd like to make adopt ordinance 124, 2014 as an emergency. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Sorese seconds. Discussion. So what this does is simply increases some of the EMS fees that we bill to insurance companies, and we get EMS money back, about a half $500,000 a year typically, that gets reimbursed to the fire department. From the survey that was done, these will put our rates more in line with all the surrounding communities. So, and if you don't have insurance, you are not billed. This is not something that's billed to you as a resident of Twinsburg. It's only if your insurance doesn't cover it, you're not billed for EMS service in the city. Is there any other comment? Shannon, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Fury,
Yes.
Mr. Sorese,
Yes.
Mr. Roden,
Yes.
Mr. Scafidi,
Yes.
Mr. McDermott,
Yes.
Mr. Yates,
Yes.
Mrs. Stoffer.
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 124, 2014 passes as an emergency, 7-0. Ordinance 126, 2014 is a rezoning ordinance that would be on its third reading tonight, but we have not had a public hearing, and that's scheduled for our next meeting, January 13th. So we're going to pass over that this evening. And we're going to move on to ordinance 127, 2014. Actually, I think we were going to make a motion to table that so that the Finance Committee could work with the Human Resource Department in working that out.
Yes.
So at this time, I'd like to make a motion that we table ordinance 127, 2014 and refer it to the Finance Committee. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Any discussion? Shannon, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Fury,
Yes.
Mr. Sorese,
Yes.
Mr. Scafidi,
Yes.
Mr. McDermott,
Yes.
Mr. Yates,
Yes.
Mrs. Stoffer,
Yes.
Mr. Roden.
Yes.
Okay, the motion to table 127, 2014 passes 7-0. Let's see. Ordinance 129, 2014.
An ordinance amending section 105.01 of the codified ordinances of the City of Twinsburg to describe and identify new wards and boundaries in accordance with the report of the Districting Commission as required by section 3.02 of the Charter of the City of Twinsburg.
Okay. I'd like to suspend the rules and place ordinance 129, 2014 on its third and final reading and declare it an emergency. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. McDermott seconds. Discussion on the emergency. The reason that this is on an emergency is that by the charter, every 5 years, we have to do a redistricting committee to make sure that the wards are balanced with a number of eligible voters within 10%. And that's been done. but the charter also calls out that we have to have this voted on or implemented by January 10th of the following year. We don't have a meeting until the 10th, so we're gonna put it on emergency.
No, we don't need. This one does not need an emergency.
We just
Today's the
need the
9th.
third and final reading tonight, and
Okay.
then the 30 days will pass in time.
All right, then I will rescind my motion to pass it on an emergency, and I'll make a motion that we adopt ordinance 129, 2014. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. McDermott seconds. So this is a redistricting ordinance. It moves some residents from Ward 3 to Ward 2, and then from Ward 2 to Ward 1, 4 and 5 being unchanged. And that was done by an appointed board represented by each ward in the last year. So, Shannon, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Fury?
Yes.
Mr. McDermott?
Yes.
Mr. Scafidi?
Yes.
Mr. Yates?
Yes.
Mrs. Stoffer?
Yes.
Mr. Roden?
Yes.
Mr. Sorese?
Yes.
Ordinance 129, 2014 passes 7-0. Ordinance 130, 2014.
An ordinance authorizing and directing the appropriation of certain interests in real property necessary for the improvements to Darrow Road located between Glenwood Drive and Post Road.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion that we adopt ordinance 130, 2014. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Yates seconds. Discussion. This is acquiring easements and real property for the widening of the 91 Darrow Road project between Glenwood and Post. Shannon, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Fury?
Yes.
Mr. Yates?
Yes.
Mr. McDermott?
Yes.
Mrs. Stoffer?
Yes.
Mr. Roden?
Yes.
Mr. Sorese?
Yes.
Mr. Scafidi?
Yes.
Ordinance 130, 2014 passes 7-0. Ordinance 131, 2014.
An ordinance amending section 147.34, employee recognition of the codified ordinances of the city of Twinsburg.
I move that we adopt ordinance 131, 2014. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Sorese seconds. Discussion. This increases a fund from $3,000 to $5,000 a year for employee recognition. Shannon, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Fury?
Yes.
Mr. Sorese?
Yes.
Mr. Yates?
Yes.
Mrs. Stoffer?
Yes.
Mr. Roden?
Yes.
Mr. Scafidi?
Yes.
Mr. McDermott?
Yes.
Ordinance 131, 2014 passes 7-0. Ordinance 133, 2014.
An ordinance accepting the bid of Trax Construction 30701 Euclid Avenue, Wickliffe, Ohio 44092 for the Hillsdale Drive improvements.
Thank you. Ordinance 134, 2014.
An ordinance determining to proceed with improving Chamberlain Road by constructing a sanitary sewer between certain termini.
Thank you. Ordinance 136, 2014.
An ordinance authorizing right-of-way donations and temporary easements of city-owned property for the State Route 91 Phase 1 widening improvement project.
Okay. Ordinance 137, 2014.
An ordinance amending section 505.20 registration of dangerous or vicious dogs of the codified ordinances of the city of Twinsburg and declaring an emergency.
Okay. I move that we adopt, or excuse me, I move that we place ordinance 137, 2014 on its third and final reading and declare it an emergency. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Sorese seconds. Discussion on the emergency. The reason for the emergency is the police chief has asked that we have this codified, or this ordinance adopted prior to the first of the year. And what this is, it updates our current vicious dog code. In the past, if you had a vicious dog or a dog that bit somebody, in order to keep an eye on it, you had to get it tattooed. Now, they implement a microchip so that you can identify and track the dog. And this updates our ordinance to be more in line with what vets do now. Shannon, would you call the roll for the emergency, please?
Mr. Fury?
Yes.
Mr. Sorese?
Yes.
Mrs. Stoffer?
Yes.
Mr. Roden?
Yes.
Mr. Scafidi?
Yes.
Mr. McDermott?
Yes.
Mr. Yates?
Yes.
Okay. The emergency passes 137, or excuse me, the emergency passes 7-0. I'd now like to adopt ordinance 137, 2014 as an emergency. Is there a second?
I'll second. Yield.
Mr. Sorese, second. Discussion? Shannon, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Fury?
Yes.
Mr. Sorese?
Yes.
Mrs. Stoffer?
Yes.
Mr. Roden?
Yes.
Mr. Scafidi?
Yes.
Mr. McDermott?
Yes.
Mr. Yates?
Yes.
Ordinance 137, 2014 passes 7-0 as an emergency. Ordinance 145, 2014.
An ordinance to make temporary appropriations for the ordinary and other necessary expenses of the City of Twinsburg, Ohio during the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2015, and declaring an emergency.
I move that we place ordinance 145, 2014 on its third and final reading and declare it an emergency. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Scafidi seconds. Discussion on the emergency. The reason we need the emergency is this is our temporary budget, and we need to have it in place, I think by the first of the year with the county. And then we will have a finalized budget by March 31st. So we've done it a few different ways, where last year we used a permanent version at this point, but we might still have some adjustments in healthcare and some other things that we don't have the final numbers on. So this is really the city's budget, and we're going to, we need to get this placed and in place before the first of the year, and that's why we need the emergency, and we can't wait the additional 30 days. Shannon, would you call the roll on the emergency?
Mr. Fury?
Yes.
Mr. Scafidi?
Yes.
Mr. Roden?
Yes.
Mr. Sorese?
Yes.
Mr. McDermott?
Yes.
Mr. Yates?
Yes.
Mrs. Stoffer?
Yes.
Okay. The emergency clause passes 7-0. I'd like to adopt, I make a motion that we adopt ordinance 145, 2014 as an emergency. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Scafidi seconds. Is there discussion on the budget?
I do have a few comments. First of all, I would like to thank Karen and the department heads for working really diligently on keeping costs down and getting this budget under control this year. The general fund, as Karen mentioned earlier, is only going up 1%, and I know that this is temporary appropriations. We still have final adjustments that we will make in the coming months, but the overall budget 5%. It took a lot of hard work to get there, and as you know, our revenues diminished this year. We don't have a final number, but at least we're expecting total for the year about 8% down, I would think. So we knew that this was necessary, and I'm very, very happy with how the budget process was conducted and the outcome of it. So good job to you, to the department heads, and to all of the staff and employees for working hard to keep costs down, and we do appreciate it. Nice job.
Thank you.
And this was a challenging year because this is the first year we've gone without, after we lowered the income tax back down to 0.25%, which is a 13.5 or a 12.5% reduction. So being at 8, there was a little carryover in front, but it's been a good year.
We're making some progress. We're getting some of that back. And thank you, Larry, for your hard work with Cornerstone and the other businesses in making that happen. Appreciate it.
Okay. All right. So, are there any other discussion on the budget? Shannon, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Fury?
Yes.
Mr. Scafidi?
Yes.
Mr. Roden?
Yes.
Mr. Sorese?
Yes.
Mr. McDermott?
Yes.
Mr. Yates?
Yes.
Mrs. Stoffer?
Yes.
Okay. Ordinance 145, 2014 passes 7-0 as an emergency. Resolution 146, 2014.
A resolution authorizing the advancement of local taxes from the Summit County Fiscal Officer for the tax year 2014, payable in 2015, in accordance with Ohio Revised Code, Section 321.34.
Okay. I make a motion that we adopt Resolution 145, 2014. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Mr. McDermott seconds. Discussion. This is an annual resolution that we pass, which allows us to collect taxes through the county for the next year. Shannon, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Fury?
Yes.
Mr. McDermott?
Yes.
Mr. Sorese?
Yes.
Mr. Scafidi?
Yes.
Mr. Yates?
Yes.
Mrs. Stoffer?
Yes.
Mr. Roden?
Yes.
Resolution 146, 2014 passes 7-0. Ordinance 147, 2014.
An ordinance amending the current year appropriations for the various special revenue accounts as established in Ordinance 19, 2014, the appropriation ordinance for the City of Twinsburg for the year 2014, and declaring an emergency.
I'd like to make a motion that we place ordinance 147, 2014 on its third and final reading and declare it an emergency. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Sorese seconds. Discussion on the emergency. The reason for the emergency is we are closing, or we are adjusting some accounts for our year-end close. What this does, it reduces the health care in the sewer department by $200,000. And it also, we're escrowing or accruing for some money for a 3-year lease for some trucks in the service department that we've agreed to, but because it's a 3-year lease, we have to put all 3 years of money aside in this account, and then we'll work it out after the lease goes through with the bank. So, is there any other discussion? Shannon, would you call the roll on 147, please?
Mr. Fury?
Yes.
Mr. Sorese?
Yes.
Mr. Scafidi?
Yes.
Mr. McDermott?
Yes.
Mr. Yates?
Yes.
Mrs. Stoffer?
Yes.
Mr. Roden?
Yes.
Okay. Ordinance 147, 2014.
No.
That was the
Just the
emergency.
That was the emergency. I need to it now. So the emergency passes 7-0. I'd like to adopt as an emergency 147, 2014.
I'll second.
Mr. Sorese seconds. Is there any further discussion? Shannon, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Fury?
Yes.
Mr. Sorese?
Yes.
Mr. Scafidi?
Yes.
Mr. McDermott?
Yes.
Mr. Yates?
Yes.
Mrs. Stoffer?
Yes.
Mr. Roden?
Yes.
Ordinance 147, 2014 passes 7-0 as an emergency. Let's see. Resolution 148, 2014.
A resolution acknowledging council's receipt and review of the monthly fiscal statements submitted by the Finance Department for October and November 2014.
I move we adopt Resolution 148, 2014. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Yates seconds. Discussion. We do this monthly. It's a check for the auditors to know that we have reviewed financial documents that have been supplied to us. Shannon, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Fury?
Yes.
Mr. Yates?
Yes.
Mrs. Stoffer?
Yes.
Mr. Scafidi?
Yes.
Mr. McDermott?
Yes.
Mr. Roden?
Yes.
Mr. Sorese?
Yes.
Resolution 148, 2014 passes 7-0. Resolution 149, 2014.
A resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with U.S. Fittings Incorporated to provide tax incentives under the terms and conditions of the Twinsburg Occupancy Program.
I make a motion that we adopt Resolution 149, 2014. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mrs. Stoffer seconds. Discussion. This is a top agreement or a Twinsburg occupancy program where we have a company, U.S. Fittings, that's moving from Bedford into Twinsburg, bringing immediately $520,000 of taxable income, and with a plan to grow to an additional $300,000. So this gives them a 50% grant for 5 years, Larry? Okay, so is there any other discussion? Shannon, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Fury?
Yes.
Mrs. Stoffer?
Yes.
Mr. McDermott?
Yes.
Mr. Yates?
Yes.
Mr. Roden?
Yes.
Mr. Sorese?
Yes.
Mr. Scafidi?
Yes.
Resolution 149, 2014 passes 7-0. Ordinance 150, 2014.
An ordinance authorizing the mayor of the city of Twinsburg, Ohio, to enter into a contract with the Ohio Patrolmen's Benevolent Association Patrol Unit.
Okay. Resolution 151, 2014.
A resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with Twinsburg Industrial Properties 3, LLC, and Bridgestone Americas, Incorporated, in Cornerstone Business Park, Spec Building, Number 5, under the Community Reinvestment Area Program, created pursuant to Ohio Revised Code, Section 3735.66 for real property tax abatement.
Okay. I make a motion that we adopt Resolution 151, 2014. Is there a second?
I'll yield.
Mr. McDermott seconds. Discussion. This is a 207,000 square foot building that's being constructed at Cornerstone Park that will house several companies, but Bridgestone and Bridgestone America is one of them. And this simply for the reinvestment, it gives them a tax abatement on their property tax on the new property that they're building. Any other discussion?
It's 25% abatement for 5 years.
Thank you, Mayor. Any other discussion? Shannon, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Fury,
Yes.
Mr. McDermott,
Yes.
Mr. Yates,
Yes.
Mrs. Stoffer,
Yes.
Mr. Roden,
Yes.
Mr. Sorese,
Yes.
Mr. Scafidi.
Yes.
Resolution 151, 2014 passes 7-0. Ordinance 152, 2014.
An ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement to purchase certain real property located at 10135 Darrow Road, Twinsburg, Ohio, and declaring an emergency.
I make a motion that we I make a motion that we place Ordinance 152, 2014 on its third and final reading and declare it an emergency. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Sorese seconds. Discussion on the emergency. The city is buying property located on the northeast side of Glenwood in 91 as part of the road construction program, and will also give us a unified ownership of that, 25 acre area by the down through the police station to the golf course. Shannon, can you call the roll on the emergency, please?
Mr. Fury,
Yes.
Mr. Sorese,
Yes.
Mr. McDermott,
Yes.
Mr. Yates,
Yes.
Mrs. Stoffer,
Yes.
Mr. Roden,
Yes.
Mr. Scafidi.
Yes.
The emergency clause passes 7-0. Now I'd like to make a motion that we adopt as an emergency Ordinance 152, 2014.
I'll second.
Mr. Yates seconds. Discussion? Shannon, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Fury,
Yes.
Mr. Yates,
Yes.
Mr. McDermott,
Yes.
Mrs. Stoffer,
Yes.
Mr. Roden,
Yes.
Mr. Sorese,
Yes.
Mr. Scafidi.
Yes.
Ordinance 152, 2014 passes 7-0 as an emergency. Ordinance 153, 2014.
An ordinance accepting the final dedication plat for Cornerstone Business Park Phase 2 subdivision plat date stamped received September 30th, 2014, and declaring an emergency.
I make a motion that we place Ordinance 153, 2014 on its third and final reading and declare it an emergency. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. McDermott seconds. Discussion on the emergency. Ordinance 153 is partnered with 151 in that it's the approval of the Phase 2 subdivision, and it's been approved by the Planning Commission for the Cornerstone development. Shannon, can you call the roll, please?
For the emergency,
Yes, please.
Mr. Fury,
Yes.
Mr. McDermott,
Yes.
Mr. Yates,
Yes.
Mrs. Stoffer,
Yes.
Mr. Roden,
Yes.
Mr. Sorese,
Yes.
Mr. Scafidi.
Yes.
So the emergency passes 7-0. I make a motion that we adopt as an emergency Ordinance 153, 2014. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Sorese seconds. Discussion? Shannon, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Fury,
Yes?
Mr. Sorese,
Yes.
Mr. Yates,
Yes.
Mrs. Stoffer,
Yes.
Mr. Roden,
Yes.
Mr. Scafidi,
Yes.
Mr. McDermott.
Yes.
Ordinance 153, 2014 passes 7-0 as an emergency. Resolution 154, 2014.
A resolution authorizing a limited exception to Section 509.11 of the Codified Ordinance of the City of Twinsburg prohibiting construction noise during certain hours for the State Route 91 resurfacing project.
I'd like to make a motion that we adopt Resolution 154, 2014. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Scafidi seconds. Discussion? So later this year, the county or the state is going to resurface from the Hudson line up to Post Road, Route 91. And what they asked is if we'd let them do it at night. And what this does is allows them to do the south end in the industrial zone at night, but we've asked that the residential end only be done in the day so that the residents aren't kept up at night with grinding and asphalt being put down. And as Mr. Scafidi mentioned to me, the backing up of the truck, so you get the beep, beep, beep at 3 in the morning. See, that might be a little bit of a hassle. So that's what we're doing here, is simply setting the hours that they can construct that road. Is there any other comments or discussion?
I believe the project's going to start next June. Is that correct? June.
Okay, in June. Thank you. Shannon, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Fury,
Yes.
Mr. Scafidi,
Yes.
Mrs. Stoffer,
Yes.
Mr. Roden,
Yes.
Mr. Sorese,
Yes.
Mr. McDermott,
Yes.
Mr. Yates.
Yes.
Resolution 154, 2014 passes 7-0. And finally, Resolution 155, 2014.
A resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into a 3-year agreement with Cartograph Systems Incorporated for the implementation of an upgrade to the current system.
I make a motion that we adopt Resolution 155, 2014. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Roden seconds. Discussion. This is to go into a contract for 3 years for a software upgrade on a system we call Cartograph. Cartograph was adopted about 8 years ago, and it basically is a detailed maintenance log of our vehicles, how many we have, what the mileage is, what the maintenance was. It was recommended to us by a performance audit that was done probably 10 years ago. And it also, in conjunction with that, it has it works with our gas pump so that we have, a card swipe or an automated way to see who's getting gas and what vehicle goes in, and it really helps the police and the fire and the service department keep track of the vehicles and justify the new ones that we need to buy when they're due. So, Shannon, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Fury,
Yes.
Mr. Roden,
Yes.
Mr. Sorese,
Yes.
Mr. Scafidi,
Yes.
Mr. McDermott,
Yes.
Mr. Yates,
Yes.
Mrs. Stoffer.
Yes.
Okay, Resolution 155, 2014 passes 7-0. And that concludes our legislation for this evening. Next on our agenda is unfinished business, new business, and miscellaneous. Maureen, do you have anything?
No, just once again, I'd like to wish everyone a very, very happy holiday. That's all I have.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Sorese?
Yes, I just wanted to mention, I attended the Historical Society annual holiday get-together last Wednesday night, and it was very well attended, and it was a very nice time with a lot of nice people. It was a good event, and I'm glad that I went. Also, just want to wish everyone a Merry Christmas or Happy Holidays, and that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Roden?
Nothing, it seems just happy holidays, everybody. Thank you.
Okay. Shannon, could you put those on the table for me? No, they're not. Those are gourmet cupcakes and cup lollipops from Cupcaked, which is down on the square, and the owner is Sherry Taylor, and they're awesome. And the reason they're there is because Sam Scafidi has a birthday on Thursday, and we're going to wish Sam a happy birthday. And we're not going to sing to you, Sam. but
You just got to eat all of them before you leave.
And I didn't do candles because, there's issues with fire hazards in buildings and things like that. And I'm not even sure exactly what that number is, but I think you're close to a decade. So I just wanted to wish you sincerely, Sam, happy birthday this Thursday.
Thank you.
As well as to the residents of Twinsburg, have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Mr. McDermott.
Yeah, I'm going to take this opportunity to wish Sam a happy birthday and many more.
Thank you, Bob.
And to the residents, have a super holiday, safe, That's all.
All right, Mr. Yates?
Nothing further from me, just happy holidays, everyone.
Okay. Mr. Scafidi?
I have nothing further, just thank you again for the birthday
busy
wishes. I appreciate that.
You're welcome,
Thank you.
Sam. Mayor Prokop?
Well, of course, happy birthday, Sam.
Thank you, Mayor.
Can I tell everybody how old you're going to be, or?
Go ahead.
No, I think everybody has the message here, but sincerely, I hope it's a wonderful birthday for you. I know it will be. So, congratulations.
Thank you.
Also, to our residents, to your family, to your friends, enjoy the holidays. Stay safe. Enjoy the good company, and wish you the best of the holidays. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, and may your New Year's be merry and bright. Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor. Mr. Maestros?
Thank you, Mr. Fury. I just want to thank council again for another great year. Wish you happy holidays to everybody else, and point out Mr. Yates is being a little quiet, but Alabama, Ohio State, I have a feeling that might be one. Mr. Yates is a big Alabama fan, so we'll see what comes at the next council meeting.
All right.
Good point.
Shannon, do you have anything this evening?
Just happy holidays and happy birthday, Sam.
Thank you.
Karen, do you have anything you want to say to me one time before the year ends?
Yeah, but you can't do it.
There we go. I got it. She didn't hear it. Just one time, Karen. Come on.
I said it.
All right.
Come on, say it, Karen.
I love you.
And with that, I'm going to adjourn our council meeting. Thank you.
Oh, Karen, did he make you do that?